What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew, and it is match reaction time. Our round 14 game against the Essendon Football Club is complete, and we've dished out one hell of a hiding. Let's bring up the scores here as we start to pass through this game a little bit. Geelong, 23 goals, 13, 151. Smoked the Bombers to the tune of 95 points. The Bombers 8-56. Now, I'm going to say this at the beginning. Essendon weren't half bad at points. They had fleeting moments where they looked pretty plucky, and you could kind of see that the green shoots that they've got coming through look pretty solid. But of course, they are so devoid of experience and strength and size against a top-tier team like the Cats right now that they still got pretty badly exposed. Let's take a look at the Worm here, where you can kind of see, reflected in my point here, some moments where the Bombers got, a bit of a run on. Specifically in the third quarter here, where they still lost the third quarter. They kicked 5 goals to 7 in that particular term and didn't look too bad at different points. But ultimately, as we can see here in this last quarter, Geelong absolutely stretched its legs, pulled away in that final turn, kicking 7 goals, 5 to 1 behind to make the margin a very healthy percentage booster of 95 points. There's not a lot here that the Worm really tells us. Geelong kind of dominated from the get-go. I think there might have been a moment where the Bombers were actually in front. I'd have to quickly skip ahead to the team stats here and double-check that one. I think there was a brief moment where they might have been, about 4 minutes where they in the first quarter where they were leading by a point. But otherwise, there's not a lot to see there. So we'll go through all of these team stats and break down all the details before we get into some individuals, all after a word from our sponsor, Cyril Cook Florist.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist. Visit them at shop 1211 Leather Street in Breakwater. Phone them on 035 222 2244 or visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au and use the offer code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout to get 20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for your ongoing support of the Hoops Crew and all we get up to. Now, let's start pulling apart some of these team stats. Now, I honestly don't think there's much for us to glean from this. It was a complete and utter domination from the Cats, but we can take a look at the hows and whys, and there's one particular point here that I assume the data is going to support that highlights, I guess, one of the most important qualities the Cats have going into what we hope to be a finals campaign later this year. So disposal-wise, the Bombers had more of it, but they were wasteful. The Cats' pressure was enormous. Still, it was a high possession game for both teams. 404 for the Bombers, 392 for the Cats, well above average for both teams, especially the Cats. Kicking right, we can kind of see Geelong forced the Bombers into handball. And to be honest, we've seen this over the years that a team that can chain their handballs together can get through the Geelong defense. And there were moments, especially in that third quarter, where the Bombers chained the ball quite well, but they had no defensive chops to be able to win the ball back the other way. So we can see the inside 50 Cat, despite all of these possessions, they went inside 50 just 38 times. The Cats, 63. Efficiency, pretty good for both teams, especially the Cats when it comes to the inside 50 efficiency. Free kicks, not much to see there. Hit-outs, Goldie did a pretty good job, but as did Reece Stanley. Clearances, again, a bit of a reversal of what we're used to here. We are used to a Geelong midfield that tends to lose at the centre clearance and wins around the stoppage. This was reversed again today. Maybe there's a bit of a change in pattern that we should start observing here, with the Bombers just slightly edging the Cats out when it comes to overall clearances. Possession count, again, kind of reflecting the disposals, what we saw before. Match possession, pretty much what the Worm told us. Marks. So we played a bit of a kicking game here. We didn't use the handball nearly as much as the Bombers did. Reflected that in the marking count. Marks inside 50 were really good with. There was some very strong hands. Now, admittedly, again, smaller bodies from the Bombers defenders meant that it was a little bit easier than usual, but there was also some brilliant disposal inside 50 at different points, really putting it lace out, even to the point where even some of the best defenders in the comp would struggle to get on the end of some of those kicks. It was really awesome from the mids delivering the ball inside 50. Scoring, we can kind of see the picture here, but defense is where I want to look. And again, the tackles inside 50, I think, is very rapidly becoming the most important stat for the Geelong Football Club this year. The amount of pressure we are laying inside our forward 50 and keeping the ball in that end of the ground has been huge for the Cats this year. And I'm looking forward to some of those encounters with some of the top teams. And obviously, as most of you know, we're not going to get a huge number of those before the remainder of the season. We've, of course, got Brisbane next week, GWS a few weeks after that. But otherwise, for the most part, it is based on the ladder, some cellar dwellers that we're going to be playing. And so we're maybe not going to get to really put that to the test, but it has held us in pretty good stead so far this year against some of those other top 8 teams when we've been locking the ball inside forward 50. And it's been contributions from smalls and talls. We heard in post-game interviews with the likes of, who mentioned it, Jeremy Cameron, that there's bets going on within the players. If you don't get any tackles, there's some sort of payment you've got to make. I like it. There's just that little bit of extra incentive to keep that pressure going. Constantly keeps it at the forefront of the mind. The talls are doing it, and the smalls are doing it, and it's been really, really important. And the rest here is pretty well irrelevant when it comes to team stats. We started really resting some players towards the end there. Bailey Smith got his 41st disposal, and then we didn't see him for pretty much the final 10 minutes of the match. Did notice the ice was on the hamstring again, so we'll just see how he goes there. Hopefully that's just a preventative thing and a very cautious approach from the Cats. But we'll move on to some of the player stats because Bailey Smith is the big highlight numerically speaking with 41 disposals and 6 clearances, I might add. He's continuing to dominate this year, you presume, with that many possessions, though Max Holmes is going to make a fair fist of it too. Nearly 80 between the two of them. That's a huge effort. You would imagine that with the way he's accumulating the ball, now there's obviously this conversation about his efficiency and maybe the kicks aren't as effective as what they could be. We'll take a look at some disposal efficiency shortly. But you would imagine that's probably close to another 3-vote game for Bailey Smith, simply because he just catches the eye with how often he's getting the ball. That's right. Let's look at that disposal efficiency quickly. Bailey Smith disposal efficiency, 58.5. So it's still, again, one of those areas that probably needs a little bit of work. But he's dumping that ball inside 50 often, and we are doing such a good job of locking the ball in there that it is almost, I can't say 100%, but almost as useful as someone who gets laced out. Let's continue back to those basic stats, though. We'll focus on our disposals once again. Max Holmes with 36 as well was huge, especially late. He just continued to soldier on, especially like when Bailey Smith went off. He went up another gear. Graham Myers, really effective again. One of his big figures is, of course, the goal assists. He had 2 of those and presumably a lot of score involvements as well. Tom Stewart, he's starting to find that ominous Tom Stewart form. It has been very, very good to see these last few weeks. Those weeks off, those breaks have been really important. But the Cats have also been able to structure up in such a way that he's becoming that spare man in defense and playing that role that he's done so well to perfection once again. Of course, the tags are probably going to come. At some point, you would imagine there's going to have to be a bit of extra attention given to Tom Stewart because he's got 16 marks, a lot of those intercepted, a lot of other intercept possessions as well. He's doing an amazing job. At some point, maybe other teams start to look at that again and revisit some of those plans from last year. Problem is, you've got even more players to tag now, from Bailey Smith to Max Holmes. So it's a tricky situation for opposition teams when you've got Tom Stewart back up and about and the Dash brothers doing some incredible things in the midfield. Mark O'Connor is putting in a career best season once again, 22 disposals. Let me bring that up. Zach Guthrie with 20, just intercepting and look really, really poised. And early on, some really courageous acts, backing into a contest with big 2-meter Peter, where he nearly got split in half, was huge. And then he backed up again a minute or two later with another courageous act. He set the tone really early on for what we wanted our players to be delivering. He did a phenomenal job. Lawson Humphreys playing another great game. Very much as we start to look through these numbers, you can throw a blanket over a lot of individuals here who put in a really good game. Jeremy Cameron with 6, Sean Manor with 3 goals, Shannon Neal with 4. These, when I hone in on Shannon Neal, and of course, lower rung opposition. But this is what we're looking for Shannon Neal. Not just the 4 goals, but probably to get that, 10 to 12, in this case, 13 disposals per game. He doesn't need to light it up on that front, but 10 to 12 effective possessions probably results in 2 to 3 goals most games. 9 marks as well. He had good sticky hands over the course of the night, was really impressive. Jeremy Cameron doing what Jeremy Cameron does, taking the P155 at different points. 14 disposals, 6 goals, 1 from him, looked fantastic. Sean Manor filled up his boots nice and early, but then was really consistent and body lined the ball throughout the game. There's no real weak links in this. Mitch Duncan coming on as the sub. Paddy Dangerfield just, physical, really took advantage of the opportunities that came his way. I think this was closer to what I would like to see from Danger, where he's not the focal point, but whenever he goes near the ball, he does Paddy Dangerfield-like things and just bursts through contests. Both of his goals were snaps over the shoulder. Very good-looking ones, I might add. But I would like this to be the way our forward line operates, where he's not the focal point, and it's so easy to get suckered into delivering the ball to Paddy Dangerfield because of who he is and the aura that he has. But we've got two big key forwards who are doing an exceptional job at the moment. 10 goals between Cameron and Neil. And Dangerfield is just this beautiful foil on the side. So let's hone in on the big guys and let Danger do his work at their feet. Or if he does get a bit of extra space, then take advantage of it. Reece Stanley, I mentioned before, did a great job in the ruck. I'd say Goldie maybe got the points in some respects, but Reece got really dangerous as well. Utilised that speed. Kick 1 goal 1. Really, really important around the ground. Loved Reece's work. And so those are, I think, the key players to look at here over the course of the game. Some really great stuff from the Cats in this matchup. And of course, to remind everyone before we sign off here, the Cats beating the Bombers 23 goals, 13. So some hyper efficiency, 151. Beating the Bombers 856, a 95-point win to the Cats this week. It was awesome stuff. You love to see it. And hopefully that holds us in very good stead with an important matchup against the Lions at GMHBA Stadium next week. I believe it's Friday night. Thank you all for having tuned into this match reaction. We love having you here and picking through the game and the data with us. Lots of good things to take away from this particular match, and I'm really excited to see what that bodes for next week. The Lions been in some interesting form of late. Pinching wins they shouldn't, losing games they shouldn't. It's been a strange old time for them, but they are the reigning premiers. They do have a very high quality lineup. And I'm keen to see how we go against them next week on our home deck. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Hoops Crew on YouTube, like this video, share it with your friends and family, get the word out there about all the content that we are creating. We are also on Patreon. That is patreon.com/thehoopscrew, where you can subscribe for 7 days of free, 100% early access, just to check out all of the stuff that we do there. And if you like it, consider then subscribing. It costs $5 per month to get access to all of our exclusives, early access content, and extended content from myself, Ben, the chaps. There's lots there for you to enjoy. You'll find me at Paul James Games on socials. That's Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram. The Hoops Crew is at The Hoops Crew. And until next time, remain Geelong strong, everyone. The Cats getting it done comprehensively. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later.